In just a few short weeks, Anthology Together is bringing you the best of ed tech at the Walt Disney World Swan and Dolphin Resort in Orlando, Florida. Join the global education community to hear about what's next in the future of learning, get a first-hand look at the latest innovations, and discover new insights to help both your institution and students achieve their goals. The future of learning is here, and there's no better place to see it than at Anthology Together 2022. The event kicks off on July 11th, so register today at www.anthology.com/together. Lead Squared is a cutting-edge CRM platform for enrollment management. With Lead Squared, you will deliver a seamless student experience, streamline admissions processes, lower costs, and increase retention. Schedule a demo at leadsquared.com. Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. Dr. Joe Salustio back with you again on another episode. As we're recording this, I'm literally listening. I'm listening to this podcast. I'm literally watching the ticker that tells me how many downloads of this podcast we have. Obviously, by the time this episode airs, we will have passed this number. But there are 149,857 downloads of the EdUp Experience. What did I just say? 149,857 downloads of this podcast, which you humble us with the engagement, the listening. We are so appreciative that we're been able to put this together and that people actually want to listen. Although I wonder if my wife has listened 149,856 of those times to get the number up. But I'm going to assume that it's not just her and that we're providing some value to the higher ed community. We have had over the years amazing guest hosts as we kind of celebrate this. We'll celebrate it on social media and then we'll celebrate it again when we release this episode. But we've had so many guest hosts come on, and we've thought we'd crowdsource our guest hosts and bring on people that know just a little bit about higher ed. I mean, not too much, but just a little bit. And in this case, I have a guest co-host with me that knows just a little bit. In fact, I'm so much more seasoned, and I know way more than he does. But he does happen to be the guru of online learning, and his name is Dr. Bill Papicello. Bill,
well, hello there, Joe. Pleasure to be with you, as always, sort of.
Bill, you have anything you want to say?
This is so fun.
Well, I didn't know that your voice would go up that high, Bill, but it is going to be fun.
Well, I just want to say that if your wife is listening to you on the podcast, it's probably the only place she listens to you.
Good one, Bill. Good one. As you all know, I have the control of the sound effects. So the entire point of having a guest co-host is that I get to use them so that they don't get the applause for the jokes. I am the only one that gets the applause for the jokes. But Bill, that was pretty good, I'll tell you. How are you, and what's going on in Bill's life?
Well, I'm just back from a month-long cruise through Europe, and
cheers,
and getting ready next week to go back. We're going to go back to Switzerland and Austria.
Cheers.
So in case those of you who are listening can't guess, I'm retired, except when Joe makes me work occasionally.
Cheers. Lots of drinks. Cheers. That's okay, Bill. You are retired and you're allowed to do whatever you want. And nobody puts baby in the corner.
There you go.
Well, we're excited today because I think we're going to have a really important conversation. We've been talking about this, Bill, and you've been back. I don't know how many of these you've co-hosted, probably 20, 25 of them, you think? How many?
A good number, yeah.
Yeah, and we've talked about the future of work. We've talked about skills development and the necessary place for the trades and how the trades are going to shape our future. We are contending with so many things right now. If you happen to be from California, you will, I could say I was living in California for 4 years now as I transition to Missouri and wipe the sweat off my brow as I go to a gas station now and people say, oh my God, here in Missouri, it's so expensive and it's $4.70 or $4.80. And I come from California and it's, $7.90 and I'm going, oh man, that's not that bad. We've got gas, we've got inflation, we've got the people leaving their jobs, and we've got remote work, and we've got the battle for talent. We have so much to talk about. And so who we brought on to give us all of the answers that we don't have. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen. His name is Scott Shaw, and he's president and CEO at Lincoln Tech. Scott, what's up?
Wow, Joe, I don't know if I have all the answers. Hopefully I have some of the answers, but there's a
I
lot,
didn't want to put
that
too
you
much
threw at
pressure.
me.
Well,
But
welcome to the show.
Thanks. I look forward to discussing this topic because it's near and dear to my heart. And it's a really important topic, I think, for our country as well.
Well, if you can't see, obviously, because this is an audio podcast, Scott's got an incredible background. I don't know what that is, like a Ferrari or
The McLaren.
That's a McLaren background. Looks a lot like Bill's car since he retired, but
Yeah, right.
Scott, talk about Lincoln Tech. Let's level set for the audience. Let's assume somebody has not come across Lincoln Tech. What do you do? How do you do it?
Sure. Well, we just celebrated our 75th anniversary. So we were founded right after World War II. Our founder, thank you, Warren Davies, was in the military and was working for the VA and came across the need for training vets in skills to get them back into the workforce. And back then in the late 40s, he started off with HVAC tech training. And then also the latest and greatest technology in automobiles was the automatic transmission. And he created some proprietary training materials on automatic transmissions and opened a school here in Newark, New Jersey. We're based here in New Jersey, and started the training process then, and actually even also started traveling around the country and going to basically hotels and other places to train people on how to fix an automatic transmission. And since that time, the company has expanded, and we now have 22 campuses in 14 states. And we focus on the vocational training programs that will get students skills to get them a job as quickly as possible. And we focus on 3 areas. We have healthcare, with the largest program being an LPN program in medical assisting. We have skilled trades, so we teach people to be welders, electricians, HVAC techs, and CNC machinists. And we also have the transportation group, which teaches people to be auto mechanics, diesel technicians, and collision repair work, as well as heavy equipment. And we've been doing this, as I said, for 75 years. And frankly, we haven't been as popular, I think, then as we are right now. I think COVID threw us all for a big loop. But our students got a new title, which is very much appreciated and very much warranted, and that is essential worker. 90% of the people that go to our schools go into programs that were deemed by the federal government to be essential workers. And so, in fact, they remained employed during COVID because we needed people to keep our offices open, even though even though employees weren't there. We needed people to fix the cars and the trucks so the Amazon people could deliver the goods to us. We needed nurses to help those that were ill. So our students remained in school during that period of time, and we enrolled more students and graduated more students. They all had job opportunities available to them when they came out. And it's a great, I think, recognition of what these individuals do. And we've also had the great opportunity, as we celebrated our 75th anniversary, to kind of look back at our alumni and see what they've achieved. And I can honestly say that we have some really outstanding success stories out there. One being someone you might know, Pat Gelsinger, the CEO of Intel. Got his start by getting off of the farm that he was living in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and going through a 12-month electronics program. And he ended up being hired by Intel and ended up becoming their first chief innovation officer, and went on to become CEO of other companies, and then has been hired back by Intel and is their current CEO. So I think everyone who probably listens to this podcast believes in the power of education and how it can transform people's lives. And I'm just happy now, it's a very long introduction by me, but I'm very happy now that people are realizing you can get into the workforce at any level, and where you take it from there is really up to the individual.
We're going to get into a little bit of a tax status conversation later that I know all of us would like to have. But before that, I think it's critical because I've never heard anybody say it quite like you have when we talk about COVID and impact, and we look at, what happened, right? How did schools react? Some of them went online. Your programs, I would imagine some of them you just cannot do online. You want to be an airplane pilot, you want to be a mechanic of a car, you want to fix it. You don't want to drive the car that the mechanic fixed online, right? I mean, it's just kind of that kind of thing. But these are sometimes programs, if you look into the past, and I worked in the sector myself, where, if you didn't get into this university or you didn't do good in community college, you went to this small vocational college and you got this skilled trade, and you're looked on, probably by some peers or those that don't understand education as less than. And all of a sudden, the government puts a tag on these folks as essential workers. Has that brought renewed, I don't know, pride of ownership in careers? And is that proving itself out in your recruiting, in your outcomes, as people go, hey, you know what? I'm an essential worker. What are you?
Well, first of all, we've always had the pride in our students and what we do. That's why we've been doing it for 75 years. But it's wonderful when others start recognizing that. And I think it does help certainly to encourage more people to do it. And I think that we have some very smart students who realize, boy, I could go to your school in 1 year, graduate, advance in my career in 3 years, be making a nice solid wage. And I look at my friends who went to college, who graduate, still don't know what they want to do, have a lot more debt than I do, and are trying to still figure it out. So it is good that people are realizing that these are essential careers. And I think it's inspiring to see students who take these careers, because to be honest, let's say we teach people to be auto technicians. Some of them might just remain auto technicians for the rest of their lives and become expert at that, which is great and fine. Others have gone on to advance within that organization, or others have gone on to own their own dealerships. Others have gone on to start and own race car companies. So again, it's really what is the, how driven is that individual? We just give them the basic skills to get into a career opportunity, and where they take it from there is up to them. But to your earlier point, our society has told everyone, if you do take these jobs, you're not getting the brass ring, or the gold ring, you're getting a plastic ring. It's a second, it's not as deemed as worthy. It's not deemed as prestigious. And it's a shame, because in this whole process of pushing everyone to college, we've taken vocational programs out of our high schools to give more time for academics. And so now, and this has started back in the 80s, we have 2 generations of people who have no idea if they have an aptitude for these types of things, or even what they are. And that's also what's leading to this skills gap, because they're not exposed to these industries and fields to really know what's involved. And so that's why employers can't find enough people to go into them. I hate to say it, we have students that don't know sometimes what end of the screwdriver to hold. I don't think that existed 40 years ago. And so it's a challenge, because everything that we do is not something that's going to be exported. And frankly, a robot's not going to do it. You're not going to have a robot come and fix your car or replace your electrician. So these are critical skills that we need to have, and frankly, they're all advancing. I mean, even if you're a welder, you're using a laptop in your job in certain aspects to read the blueprints or to do certain things. Everything is becoming much more technologically advanced. And so everything requires more training. I don't have to tell you, just open up a hood to your car, and it's sometimes hard to find where to put the oil in. There's so much.
How do I recharge this battery?
Crammed in there. So everything's more challenging. Everything needs more education, and we're happy to provide that.
You talk about somebody not knowing how to hold a screwdriver. One person that doesn't plan on using a screwdriver is my co-host today, Dr. Bill Papicello. In his retirement, he doesn't want to lift a hand to do anything. Bill, over to you.
Well, why should I need to if I've got all these wonderfully trained people now that I can call on?
Well done, sir.
And Scott, you should just know for your own edification that people of Joe's generation, they don't have any idea what a standard shift is. He didn't know there was anything other than an automatic transmission.
I happen to do know how to drive a manual. Thank you.
Yeah, now,
I do know how to drive a stick.
We'll test it one of these days, and then we'll see if you can parallel park.
Watch out!
But anyway, one of the things that I find really interesting about Lincoln Tech, it was established in 1946, I think.
Yeah.
And that was a really interesting move by your founder, because it was founded about the same time that the GI Bill came along.
Mhm.
And the GI Bill was one of the things that devalued technical education in our country.
Interesting.
And
Yeah,
as
I hadn't made
watched-
that connection before, but yes.
Yes, and it went on through for decades and decades, as the 4-year degree became the gold standard. And it's really interesting now that I'm on the outside and can watch what's happening in higher ed and what's happening in the job market, to see that there's a resurgence of people saying, well, wait a minute, there's a lot of really interesting occupations out there that are increasingly lucrative. And certainly, to finish a thought that you had, not only are people who graduate from Lincoln Tech, not only are they getting better jobs, but they're getting more lucrative jobs than the people who get their 4-year degrees and go, oh my, now what am I going to do? And I say that as a person whose degrees are in Latin and Greek. So, and I can't change the oil.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I
the
think-
beauty is, though, sorry to cut you off, but the beauty is
No.
you can always go back to college when you actually know why you're going and what you want to do, and when it's going to add real value to your career opportunities. And given that college is now online, if you're working or have 4 or 5 years of work experience, it's a lot easier to do that, whereas you couldn't do that probably a decade or two ago.
That's an excellent point. Everyone who's listening, listen up to that. I have a granddaughter who's doing exactly that. She graduated from high school, didn't know what she wanted to do, and said, I'm going to go to work and figure it out, which she did. And now she's going back to college. And I think we're going to see more of that. And it's not just people taking a year off to find themselves, but it's people taking a year off to say, oh, well, let me look around and see what's there.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to talk to you about before I let Joe bumble again is, in looking at your website, it's clear that while you understand very well the whole technical education sector, you also understand that there's more than just the technical skills involved. And there's a commitment at Lincoln Tech to really trying to produce a well-rounded person through something you call the Lincoln Edge. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you blend the soft skills and the technical skills.
Sure. Well, as you may or may not know, we constantly are interacting with employers, and obviously students that come to us are coming to us to get a job. So career placement is very critical to what we do and how we do, how we understand what to provide our students with training. So first of all of our faculty members are not educators. They are people that have been out in the field and have been doing the job. And then we give them the skills to be able to help best convey that to students. And so that way they're able to convey to students, this is what the textbook says, but if you really want to get this job done right, you do it this way. And let me tell you, my boss really loved it when I did X, Y, or Z. So they're really able to transfer knowledge that's very applicable to what they're doing. But another thing that we do is we know from listening to our employers that they're frankly sometimes more interested in the soft skills than the hard skills. And one of the key soft skills is attendance. They want to make sure that someone's going to show up every day. We as an institution call our students if they don't show up in a particular day, like what happened? Why aren't you here? Did your car break down? Do you have an issue? Are you going to be here tomorrow? We know that you need to be in constant contact with our students because they are typically older, 25, 26 years old. They have families, they have jobs, they have other things getting in the way. And we just want to make sure that there's nothing that we can do to help them become more successful, or how we can help them overcome those challenges. We also provide them with placement services. And so we are working with them day one on how to write a resume, how to do interviews, what types of questions they should ask the employer, what types of questions they should expect the employer to ask of them. We want them to be as comfortable when they enter that interview room as possible so they can be as successful as possible. We have student sensitivity funds at our schools. We try to create an environment. I love this quote from Teddy Roosevelt that I share with our faculty. Nobody cares what you know until they know that you care. And for our faculty members, I think that's very important. I mean, some of them love to just stand up there and espouse what they did and how these students should react to it. But we have a very diverse student body. And so we need to be very mindful of what challenges that they're facing. And by creating that connection, not only is it a better and more engaging learning environment, but we find that we're able to, I'll say, save more students than not, because they do have a lot of challenges and they don't probably have as many support systems as maybe many of us had going through college. And so when an obstacle comes their way, it's very easy for them to disengage and pull out. But if you have an environment where people are paying attention to them, or people are cognizant of what these challenges are, then you can hopefully help them get over that hurdle so they can eventually graduate and be successful. So a lot of the soft skills training is really just try to create that more personal environment for the students so that they know that they can be successful. Because also none of them haven't been successful in life in the past and have been told they're not going to be successful. And so we do view it as our job to help, raise their esteem and their confidence for the brief time that they're with us. So hopefully that answers your question.
So much. I have so much to ask, and I'm going to end up soapboxing. I know it, but I'm going to try to refrain from it. One of the things I want to ask, and then I'll get to the soapbox moment, is when I worked for a for-profit career school for 15 years, and we used to serve a lot of students who did not make it in a community college. In fact, that was the biggest market we had. That somebody had attempted community college. They didn't do well because there wasn't the type of wraparound services, when we talk about student services, that the vocational career college could provide. And fast forward, here we are now. Many, many, many community colleges are trying to offer the types of programs that career colleges offered or have offered historically. And I still hear sometimes that those students aren't successful. And this is for the community college brethren out there too. And because you're trying to mix a fast moving model that needs, in a student that needs tremendous support in what is traditionally a higher ed governance structure. And it doesn't work. And there's a reason why career colleges do so well. It's because it's the speed of service. It's the customer service. It's the care. It's not for-profit or nonprofit. It's surplus or it's profit. You can skin a cat the same way, right?
Yep.
And it's because the career colleges are able to dismantle what slows down a traditional academic structure and speed up what matters, like making the phone call to a student who doesn't attend. Where in a community college or other school, maybe that doesn't happen for weeks. That student's gone. And the career colleges get that. They move like at the speed of business. Is that a differentiator for you still? That you're seeing that?
Absolutely. I mean, you just have to look at who grew during the pandemic and who shrank. We grew by 20% during that period of time because we figured out how to deliver our product remotely, as we did have to go 100% remote for 3 months. But as soon as we could open our campuses, we started reopening our campuses, but we still had to provide many more of our services remotely. So if a student was interested in coming to us, they could call someone and still speak to someone. They no longer had to come into the campus to enroll. We've put together systems so they could do that remotely. We had to quickly train all of our faculty in how to train and educate remotely. And we just created a lot more interaction with our students. I mean, our students are just as disadvantaged, if not more so, than the typical community college student. And so why is it that their enrollments declined? I mean, we're not selective. Anyone who has graduated from high school can come to our schools. They can't go into our LPN program. They have to take a special test to do that. But otherwise, it's open enrollment. So there's no differentiation between us and the community college, except that frankly, we are for profit. So we knew that if we weren't serving our students, we wouldn't be able to, eat the next day. We weren't relying on someone else to bail us out. And we wanted to make sure that our students who entrusted us with their time and money could continue their education and graduate into a marketplace that was just desperate for their skills. And so it's a different mindset whereby, like when I went to college, the mindset is kind of sink or swim. You prove that you can stay here, you prove that you can make it, and then you're worthy of our college degree. And I would say that ours is one of, we've accepted you in, we will do whatever we can that's possible to help you be successful. We're here side by side to help make you successful. Now, some people might say, well, I don't know which side is better, but I know for who we are and what we do and who we serve, we're going to have a lot more people reach that finish line and become successful at the end of the day. And in that prior model, which I still think a lot of higher ed is kind of based off of, it's not, they're kind of viewed as, it's a privilege for you to come here and you either do the work or you don't. And if you don't want to do the work, that's fine by me. See you later.
The Lead Squared integrated CRM functionality will put your institution at the front end of marketing and enrollment strategy by delivering a streamlined admissions process. Capture student interest, segment your audience, create student engagement workflows, and even integrate with your student information system to create longitudinal key performance metrics you've always wanted. You can do all of this and lower your technology costs. Check out leadsquared.com for more info.
I want, and Bill, I know you want to get in on this, but I'm not going to let you quite yet. I want to add in that when you say open enrollment and you're willing to give every student a chance, there's a second part of that, and it's, you have to correct me if I'm wrong on my stats, 70%. And if you're accredited, I think you're accredited by ACCSC. Yes. Which, Bill, I'll tell you a little known fact about me. I've worked with ACCSC, ABHES, HLC twice, WASC. I'm missing one in there. Anyway, the 70% placement percentage that you've got to place students in jobs. You want to sweat. You think nonprofit higher ed is hard sometimes, and you want to sweat. Try to get 70% of your students placed in their career field, which, by the way, can be subjective sometimes when somebody comes in to audit it and they go, is this really the career field? And you want to sweat, and then some accreditor comes in and says, hey, it's not at 70%. And you go, what about the 1% that I didn't get? I placed 69% of the graduates in jobs. There's this, becoming beholden to that stat. It's awesome to be able to place those students in their jobs. It is also monumentally hard, and I would argue that 99% of nonprofit institutions in this country could not do it. They couldn't do it. It's right. You don't have the infrastructure. So I want to just balance what you said, open enrollment with the responsibility for outcomes.
Well, because our accreditors have different focus. I mean, our accreditors kind of, if they're going to get reaccredited, there are three major things that they're kind of looking at. First, what is your graduation rate? When they have minimum standards for that, as you just highlighted, what's your placement rate? Minimum standards of 70%. We're at 80%, on our way to 85%. These are minimums. I want to definitely exceed them. And then the third thing they do is they interview the students and get a survey of, how happy are they with the education. If you were to look at traditional accreditors, some of their key metrics are how many books are in your library, how many faculty members do you have, what kind of training have the faculty members gotten. There's very little focused on the student and what they're there to achieve. It's much more focused on the institution. And because of the focus of our accreditors, we're very much focused on making sure that our outcomes are as strong as possible, because that is why students are coming to us. They're coming to us not to discover who they are or figure out what to do in life. They're coming to us because they want to get a job. B, they've decided the job they want to get is in this field. And then C, they want to get that as quickly and as effectively as possible.
And Bill, I want to bring you in and just say, because I know you have so much to say here, that if you don't think, any of you, not you two, but anybody else listening doesn't think that the big online monsters that exist today are not built off a University of Phoenix model, you'd be a little bit naive. Right, Bill?
Well, yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I'm going to follow up on a couple of points. certainly, and Scott, you don't know this, but Joe should know it, even if he doesn't. I served on a federal committee that basically approves all the accreditors. So I've looked at the difference between your accreditors and the regional accrediting bodies. And certainly you're absolutely right. They're looking at different things, but it's interesting because one of the things that you said was, well, we're for profit. And as Joe knows, every institution is for profit.
Sure.
I mean, if your tax status is not for profit and you're not making more money than you're spending, you're going out of business. And right now we're finding a lot of traditional higher ed is learning that lesson the hard way.
But higher ed's not a business, is it, Bill? I mean, come on.
Well, I can tell you that when I also served as an accreditor, that if you look at why universities are put on probation or why they go under, it's almost never due to academics or success factors for their students. It's because they cannot manage their finances. And part of the problem with traditional higher education is it does not have a sustainable business model. Now, I would guess that if we looked under the sheets of Lincoln Tech,
I thought you were going to say under the hood, it would have been way better. Way better reference.
If I need any help, I'll let you know, Joe.
Okay, sounds
Otherwise,
good. Go back on mute.
You can just sit down. Or if we looked at Lincoln Educational Services in general, which I want to talk about in a bit, you'd notice that there's a real business model there. And it's one that looks a lot like the business model of any industry that we would look at outside of higher ed. And I think that's really an important point that shouldn't be missed in this conversation. Okay, Joe.
Well, no, Scott, you get to jump in.
Well, I mean, first of all, I agree that every institution is out there to make a profit, or at least to have, as you say, a surplus. You have to bring in more than you spend, otherwise you're not going to be around very long. So the nature of being called for profit, certainly also in this current administration, is certainly viewed very negatively. But at the end of the day, we are believers in, I'll say, the competitive system of trying to figure out what is the need out there in the marketplace and how can we serve it. And that's what we're constantly focused on, is how do we serve more people more efficiently. We have employers coming to us, and we probably have 2 to 3 job openings for every student that we have today. So there's a lot more that we could be doing. But how do I attract those people? How do I get those people? Certain people, are negative towards us for advertising. And then the reality is we have to educate people on what these opportunities are, because we've taken it out of the schools. And we're frankly doing a really good service for a lot of these industries, because we're pulling in people that they need, that they can't pull in themselves. And you'll also see that a lot of the traditional schools are looking to do advertising now, as they realize it's just not like, oh, that we're magical people, that everyone's going to come to us, even if they're free. People aren't going to flock to them because they don't know what they do, or maybe what they do is not as good as it could be. We believe in competition. We believe in having alternatives. Students can go anywhere they want. They don't have to come to us, but 20-25% of them are coming to us because a friend or a relative or an aunt or uncle came to us and has a great career. I think that all systems are better when there's more competition and more options for people. And we just provide one of those options that I think people should consider.
Go ahead,
Well, marketing is an interesting point, and I know Joe that's near and dear to your heart. But University of Phoenix was constantly barraged with criticism for its marketing. And I think you made this point, Scott, is that one of the reasons we need the market is that many of the people who will come to your institution, just as those who came to University of Phoenix when we started, didn't know that there were options.
Right.
They didn't even know that education was accessible to them. And the only way you can do that is go out and make yourself visible.
Right. If you have guidance counselors telling you, okay, what college are you going to? And that's the only option they give someone. What else do you left to do? I mean, we have a great program. Our CNC machining program probably has like the best ROI of any of our programs, and we just can't find enough people to come into it. They just don't know what it is. So again, you have to do advertising and try to find these students, because the employers will hire them in a nanosecond. But finding people interested to understand what the opportunity is much more challenging.
Unlike any other podcast you listen to in higher education, we do a little something here called Higher Ed Word Association, and we're going to do it right now. With your contestants, Scott Shaw, Bill Pepicello, this is where I give you a word or phrase higher ed related, and you're going to tell me the first set of thoughts that come to your mind. Don't give me one-word answers back. That makes for too short of an episode of Higher Ed Word Association. Bill, you get to start so that Scott can better prepare and you can fail. And that's the way it works here at EdUp. I'm going to give you the word. Again, you tell me what first comes to your mind. Bill, student success.
Well, student success, I think, is if you're going to measure the efficacy of any institution, student success is the one thing that we look at. On an earlier podcast, we talked with a college president who made a distinction between college-ready students and student-ready colleges. Mm-hmm. And I think that is a major factor here in student success in general. But it's certainly the number one thing that you have to think about, especially in today's environment, where education is not just a public good; it's also a public commodity, and something that people demand an ROI with.
Scott.
Well, Lincoln Tech jumped to mind for some reason when you said student success, but in deeper meaning, it's really getting our students careers, launching them on their careers. Is everyone who walks through our door, that's their mission, is to get their leg into something that's going to be more rewarding, so they can support themselves and their families. So making sure that they can complete their education and then getting them into that job of choice for them is what we would view as, for us, student success. And we focused really only on programs that are going to give a good ROI. I mean, there are a lot of other programs we could jump into that would be very attractive and get a lot more students through. Let's say, CNA, which is like one of the number one growth programs out there. But at the end of the day, you're still going to be, in the old days, making $10 to $12 an hour. In the new days, maybe it's $18 to $20 an hour, but it's really not going to go anywhere from there. And so we're much more focused on careers that are going to have a much broader opportunity level for them as well.
Okay. You got the hang of it now, Scott? Because you're up
next.
I
think so.
Here we go.
Are you going to jump? Okay. I'm ready.
They get a little harder. Transfer credit.
Well, to be honest, we really don't have any transfer credits really coming in or going out. Our programs are so short and so specialized, it's very tough to accept other people's credits, and we're not really giving credits. They're usually not leaving our program to go to someone else's welding program, for example. So for us, it really doesn't come into play. Again, most of our programs are 12 months or less.
I like that. Bill, transfer credit.
It's a very interesting part of higher education today, whether it's traditional or for profit. If you're in the more academic aspects, transfer credit is becoming real currency in higher education, because it used to be that students would go from institution to institution. In fact, for a long time, the statistics were that a student could expect to go to 4 different institutions before they graduated. And the major obstacle there was in going from institution to institution was getting their credits they had already earned accepted somewhere else. And it's really interesting now to watch as part of the marketing of all institutions is bring us your credits. We'll make them work for you somehow. And it's one of the, for me, one of the high points of how higher education is evolving a little bit, as people understand that, it's not really about the institution, it's about the students. So let's help them get from where they are to where they need to be.
Well, with
Okay,
so many
Scott.
students
Okay.
sorry, I was going to say, with so many students who don't graduate from a 4-year school, there's a large pool of people out there that do have a lot of credits, but don't have that degree. So it's a good market to satisfy, because then you'll be able to complete their journey, so to speak.
All right, Scott, here we go.
Yes.
Learning technology.
Learning technology. Well, it's changing very rapidly, especially since COVID. We luckily were able to succeed in COVID because we had already moved a lot of certainly our automotive program over to laptops. So everything was delivered over a laptop. So we didn't have to buy that equipment, and students were already using it. We're getting very much more into VR technology. We use it in welding. We're using it in our collision program. We have some VR technology that we're putting into our electrical and HVAC programs. So I think that technology is going to be becoming more and more important as a way of both educating people, but also in keeping them engaged. Gamification and trying to keep certainly our students motivated to move forward in their curriculum is critical to their long-term success. And so I think technology is just going to increase and enhance. And what we do try to do, though, is make sure that there's efficacy. There's lots of sex appeal around a lot of technology, but at the end of the day, the student hasn't learned anymore, isn't graduating at a better rate or having a higher skill level. You're just really spending a lot of money on bells and whistles with no benefit. So we also like to make sure that the technology is worth something.
In technology, it's funny, it works both ways, right? You think about cars, and I just took my car to get new tires. They took pictures of the tires that I had. Apparently, my wife says I hit a pothole and I made this bubble in my tire. I feel like she hit the pothole. I lost the argument. I just had to accept the fact that I hit the pothole, even though I disagree. But we'll talk about that in a future episode of the EdUp Experience. And picture of the tire, picture of the new tire, picture of the tire being removed, picture of the tire being put back on. Think about rental cars. I traveled for many years. I know, Bill, you have. I'm sure you have, Scott, to your, how many, 22 campuses.
Yeah.
You go rent a car. They used to walk around the car with you and say, here's a ding. And when you come back, we'll note it. And they'd color it on a piece of paper, like a little scratch. Now they take pictures of it. And so if you ding that sucker, you're going to pay. And so it protects both the consumer and the business in a way, and and then you elevate that to engines and to the health field and keeping track of statistics. I mean, it is a just growing piece of what we do, and it's affecting our lives. Bill, over to you. Sorry for that sidebar.
Yeah, I was wondering if you forgot that we're in here, and I was supposed to get to talk.
I think my feelings are hurt that I feel that my wife feels I ruined the tire, but
I'm sure she was right. In any event, I've had the advantage of watching technology in higher education advance from, basically when it was correspondence, we were sending things back and forth, to the clunky early days.
Yeah, Bill, you were around during telegram times.
Yeah, well,
Telegram.
Samuel Morse was a friend of mine.
Yeah, you've seen technology from its true beginning to where it is today.
Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself, buddy.
Especially in higher ed. And, one of the things that's true, University of Phoenix was very successful because we had been bumping along, and when the World Wide Web was finally made accessible, we knew everything there was to know about distance education at that time. So it was a matter of transferring it. And other institutions and accreditors gave us a hard time for a long time, saying, "Oh, it's a fad. This online thing is never going to catch on." And slowly they came to it. But with COVID, I think the acceleration of technology in higher ed just went through the roof. Everybody realized this was going to be a serious part of the future. And I think an important point that Scott made is that higher education needs to learn that technology is not just bells and whistles. It needs to have efficacy in the same way that banking or Amazon or other industries do, where there's a blend of brick and mortar and virtual participation that make it a seamless and valuable experience to the people who are using it.
Yeah, and I would argue that learning online is a skill that everyone's going to need because when you're in the workforce, you're most likely going to have some training that's going to be online. So the sooner you're kind of used to that, probably the better.
Yep.
Yeah, you guys did wonderful on this episode of Higher Ed War Association. We're going to need to go to the judges, though, to declare a winner. I'm going to ask the judges, did Scott Shaw beat Bill Pepicello?
100%.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Another episode. By the way, guest co-host cannot beat a guest here, as you've heard. But Scott, you did win. Ladies and gentlemen, another episode of Higher Ed War Association. All right, so we're going to close out this episode. Bill, do you have any last questions for Scott?
No, except that well, I don't want to take Joe's thunder, but in 5 years from now, do you expect that you'll be growing in new areas?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I expect that our footprint will be larger simply because a lot of our business partners want us to be in other locations that we aren't today. So we'll definitely have more campuses. And then anticipate being into new areas, because that's kind of what we do. We look to what's evolving, what's new out there. And I'm certain that there will be lots of changes, especially with electric vehicles coming online, with the need for renewable energies. There are going to be more trades that are going to need to be, frankly, developed to service those industries over time. So I would anticipate we'll be in those, as well as I could see us getting into aircraft maintenance, mechanics, very similar. Sorry, someone's trying to call me. Very similar.
Oh, somebody get it. Last time Bill had his phone ring, Scott. So, we're.
So, or maybe we'll get into aircraft mechanics, very similar to being a diesel tech or an auto tech, but just a bigger machine. So that's how I envision our next 5 years rolling out.
By the way, for anybody, it's getting rarer that people have the opportunity to work for multi-campus institutions, because I think unless you're a college like Lincoln Tech where you're hands-on and you need to be in these areas, online education is really eliminating the need for multi-campus locations in a way. It is hard. You guys can correct me if I'm, it's hard to manage multi-site locations. It's compliance, it's people, it's different hiring practices in different states. It's a whole thing. And if you haven't done it, Bill, I know you obviously have done it. I worked for two institutions, one with 15 campuses and one with 42. It's really, really hard to do it and manage it every day. And Scott, I think that's just something that gets lost in these conversations. It's like, oh, you're Lincoln Tech and you got 22 campuses and here's this university, they got a single campus. That's experience that will go away in the long run, and it's harder and harder to get these days. So you've got I'd imagine some pretty knowledgeable employees in the world of business in higher ed.
Yeah, Joe, just for the record, you're an amateur. I had over 200 sites.
I always know you're going to one-up me, Bill. What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, well, no, there's lots of regulations. Every state has their own board of nursing, as an example. They all think differently. We have to abide by the national rules, the state rules, the accrediting rules, the programmatic accrediting rules. So there is lots of variability out there. But like anything, once you do it, you learn it. And I'm fortunate that we have a lot of tenure at Lincoln Tech. My management team, the top 15 people have an average of 18 years with Lincoln. So there's a lot of knowledge there that we've acquired over that period of time, and making sure that one remains compliant is critical in our industry.
Amazing.
All right, here's your final two questions, Scott. Number one, what did we not say about Lincoln Tech? Anything that you go, you know what, I should have brought that up. Now's your chance. Plug the website. Say anything that you want to say, somewhere you're going to be speaking, some program you're rolling out. Make it exclusive, in fact, here on the EdUp Experience podcast, if you want. And go ahead.
So the first one is, since we just kicked it off, what is today, Wednesday? So on Monday, we kicked off our partnership with Dave Kindig. If you watched the Discovery Channel, he has our show called Bitchin' Rides, and he does really high-end car repairs.
Mm-hmm.
His typical car costs, I don't know, when I went to a shop, I said, oh, this looks nice. How much does that cost? Like $400,000. Okay, thank you. I'll move on. But anyway, he's desperate to find people with higher level skills. And so we're trying this new program to give basically people that are in the industry already kind of like a master class on collision repair and refinishing. So to me, that's very exciting.
It is awesome. That is awesome. All right, number two and final question. What do you see as the future for higher education?
Well, I think it's going to change dramatically because it's an industry that's needs some changing. It's just too expensive for too many people. Why is a degree 4 years? I don't know who came up with that number, but things are going to change, I think, going forward. And I think also, certainly in our sector, I think industry is going to become more connected. And I think it's only fair, especially if students are making the investment in themselves to make themselves more attractive to companies, that companies come up with a way to help them overcome their debt burden sooner rather than later. So I think there's going to be lots of changes around how much does one need in education. And I think there, frankly, will be more avenues of education, because pushing everyone through a 4-year program is not the right answer. We definitely need, if you look at the workforce, what's happening is those positions that are just a high school degree or less are shrinking, and those with more training are growing. So there definitely needs to be more post-secondary education. It just doesn't all have to be at the bachelor's level, and we just have to be more mindful of that.
Love it, Scott. This has been an incredible episode. Before I go, I do want to give one quick shout out. In fact, he's going to shout it out for me. The gentleman here, Bill Pepicello, has his own podcast under the EdUp Experience Network. Bill, give it its due.
Well, thank you, Joe. Yeah, I'm a spinoff of this. And I have to thank Joe for spinning me off, but I have a
It's the only time you ever thanked me, by the way. And I'm sure it'll never happen again.
Probably not. But I have a weekly podcast called EdUp Insights. It's mostly me ranting and opining about various topics in higher ed, and certainly technical education is one of those for people who want to go on. They're all short, so you ought to go on and listen to them. You can listen to 2 or 3 at a time before you fall asleep. And in the future, I'll be doing some actual interviews similar to this, but of course, much more expertly run.
Ooh,
so that's
well said.
That is EdUp Insight. And you can also get some of the insights on my book, which is on Amazon, called Leadership on the Field of Play.
I have it right here in my hands, ladies and gentlemen, Bill's book. I will tell you, I feel honored to be on this phone call with you two gentlemen who have done so much to help the world and the United States with higher education and training of people who we need, essential workers. Incredible stuff. Scott, did you enjoy your time today here on the EdUp Experience with me, not necessarily with Bill?
Much more so than I thought I would.
Oh, we'll take that. With Bill, you mean? You knew you'd enjoy it with me, but more than you thought.
Yeah, so that's it. That's it.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, he's Scott Shaw. He is CEO and president of Lincoln Tech. He is an amazing man, and he's doing amazing work. Scott, thank you for coming on today.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Bill.
And of course, my co-host, the guru of online learning, Dr. Bill Pepicello.
Ciao.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've just EdUp'd.
Lead Squared isn't only an enrollment CRM. It's a technology that will allow you to optimize your entire front-end student lifecycle by providing decision makers with real-time customizable dashboards. Forecasting, measuring, and optimizing for key activities will increase retention and revenue, and Lead Squared will lower technology costs simultaneously. Not only can Lead Squared align with existing admissions processes, but the technology will also help you innovate beyond what you thought was possible. The ability to access data on your phone will keep you connected, and when you add in the world-class customer service, Lead Squared transcends being a technology. It's an experience. Check them out at leadsquared.com.